So, it feels like everyone is panicking, right? The death of reading, the absolute collapse of our attention spans, this idea that we're living in a post-literate society. But what if that whole story, that widespread fear, isn't really the full picture? Okay, let's get into it. You know that feeling? You sit down, you're going to read a book, maybe a long article, and just minutes later, your brain is somewhere else completely. Your hand is just itching to grab your phone. If that feels familiar, trust me, you are not alone. And this feeling, it's actually grounded in some pretty stark data. And yeah, the numbers look pretty damning. When you look at the research, the number of Americans who read for pleasure on any given day has just plummeted. We're talking a drop of over 40% in just the last couple of decades. It's so easy to see a stat like that and just, feel this sense of doom. And that sense of doom is everywhere. You hear it from cultural critics all the time, that screens are destroying civilization, kids can't think anymore, and we just have to accept our fate. It's a simple and honestly a pretty seductive story. But here's the thing. It's not new. Not at all. To really understand what's happening today, we have to look back. It turns out every time a new kind of information technology shows up, it sets off an almost identical moral panic among the people in charge at the time. Okay, check out how old this pattern is. It's kind of wild. We can go all the way back to the 4th century BCE, to ancient Greece. Socrates himself was worried that the act of writing things down would make people forgetful. Fast forward a couple thousand years to the 18th century, and novels were the big bad, blamed for a reading epidemic and the downfall of society's morals. Then in the 19th century, it was the cheap, thrilling penny dreadfuls that were supposedly corrupting the youth. And it just keeps going right into the 20th century, where a psychiatrist actually went before Congress and testified that comic books were more dangerous than Hitler. I mean, wow. It's a cycle, and it probably sounds a little familiar. And here's the kicker. None of it ever came true. Not a single one of these apocalyptic predictions actually happened. Novels didn't cause a wave of mass elopements. In comic books, believe it or not, didn't trigger a massive crime wave. Every panic used the exact same language of addiction and corruption, and every single time, when the world didn't end, the fear just latched on to the next new thing. But hold on, that doesn't mean we should just ignore everything happening today, because something is fundamentally different this time. It's not about the fact that shallow content exists. That stuff has always been around. No, the difference is the delivery mechanism. There's this researcher, Gloria Mark, who's been tracking our attention spans for years. Back in 2004, people would spend, on average, about 2.5 minutes on any one screen before switching to something else. By 2016, that number had collapsed to just 47 seconds. That is a staggering drop. So let's break down why that is. Think about that 19th century penny dreadful. It was finite. It had a beginning, a middle, and an end. It wasn't buzzing in your pocket in the middle of dinner. A social media feed, though, it is infinite by design. It is literally engineered to never, ever stop. It's constantly seeking you out. The secret sauce here is a psychological trick called variable reward schedules. It is the exact same mechanism that makes slot machines and gambling so addictive. You pull the lever, or you refresh your feed, and you never know if you're going to get a huge reward or absolutely nothing. That total unpredictability is what keeps you hooked, what keeps you coming back. So your fractured attention isn't some accident, it's a feature. It's a design choice made to maximize ad revenue. And that brings us to what might be the most important takeaway of this whole thing. If you are struggling to focus, it is not because you are lazy or weak or undisciplined. It's because you are trying to hold your attention in an environment that has been specifically engineered to shatter it. It isn't a moral failing, it's a design problem. So if the problem is the design and not just the screen itself, then maybe we also need to update our whole definition of what it even means to be literate in the 21st century. It's time to look beyond just the printed page. Okay, think about this for a second. Have you ever really struggled to get through a dense, dry textbook? But then, on the flip side, you can get completely lost, totally absorbed in a 3-hour deep dive video essay on the exact same topic? For years, we've been taught that if that's you, there's something wrong with you, that it's some kind of learning disability. But it's not. It's a neurological difference. You could say the instruction has a disability, not the learner. Some people's brains just process spoken language way more fluently than they do written symbols. The problem isn't your ability to learn. It's the fact that we insist on this one-size-fits-all method for learning. So Here's a much better term for the times we're living in. We are not post-literate. We have become post-monomodal. Text isn't gone. It's just been joined by this whole symphony of other ways we get information: audio, video, interactive stuff, all the channels we now use to make sense of the world. And you know what? Realizing that is incredibly empowering. Because if our attention is being shaped by the environment around us, well, that means we can become the architects of that environment. We can consciously design our own spaces for focus. So, how do we actually do that? We can build what our source material calls a container for attention. Let's just walk through these steps. First, whenever you can, try to use devices that only do one thing, like an e-reader that's just for books. Second, literally schedule deep work time in your calendar, and then you have to treat it like a meeting you absolutely cannot miss. Third, be ruthless. Deliberately curate which apps are even allowed to send you notifications. Fourth, make a space for focus. Read physical books in quiet places. And fifth, just try leaving the phone behind sometimes, on a walk or during a break. It's not about rejecting technology. It's about choreographing it to work for you, not the other way around. When you step back and look at the big picture, this all really boils down to a massive choice, not just for each of us as individuals, but for our culture as a whole. The popular story out there frames this whole thing as a battle: books versus screens. But that's the false choice. That's not the real fight. The real choice is between two completely different ways of being in the world: the intentional, slow, deep state of focus versus the chaotic, reactive, and addictive ecosystem of the feed. And so that leaves us with one final huge question. What is our information future going to look like? Will it be one of intentional design, where we build environments that actually help us think and create? Or will we just sort of drift into a profitable chaos, where our attention is nothing more than a resource to be mined and sold? Right now, that choice is ours to make.